Monkey!
The idea of the sequel is a strange thing. Generally, a good sequel builds on the ideas of what came before to create a new experience that is still rooted in familiar ideas, even if the shifts are radical in nature. Sly 2: Band of Thieves still maintains the stealth platformer roots of its predecessor, but expands on it with a new, tighter control scheme, new mission-based structure, and multiple playable characters. It's a pretty big gameplay shift, but it builds on what came before to create a new yet still familiar experience for the player. Now, a bad sequel doesn't really change a thing. It creates a new game with maybe a new story, but the gameplay itself is largely unchanged, not really evolving from the previous title. Think BioShock 2. Please don't hurt me. Now I say bad, that's not necessarily a bad thing. The foundation is good enough, a sequel doesn't necessarily have to make any major changes to gameplay. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, in other words. I'd argue it's not the most innovative approach, but if the game is good, the game is good. So, Ape Escape 2. Ape Escape 2 was quite the surprise release for me. My older brother already owned the original Ape Escape for the first PlayStation, which was the first game to require a DualShock controller with analog sticks. Now these nubs became standard for the PlayStation 2, making a sequel to Ape Escape a much easier pill to swallow without having to buy a new controller just to play it. To unfortunately date myself, I first discovered Ape Escape 2 at a local Blockbuster available to rent. I was like, oh my gosh, it's Ape Escape 2! And promptly rented and eventually purchased it. Like the first game, the story is pretty straightforward. After protagonist Spike defeated Spectre, leader of the monkeys, all was right in the world. However, new character Jimmy makes a major mistake. While working for the professor, instead of sending new yellow pants to the monkeys with a transporter, side note, the professor does this with the pants. I don't know what was happening, and it makes everyone and their dog uncomfortable. He accidentally sends the people helmets, the devices that made Spectre and the other monkeys smart in the first place, instead. Spectre naturally gets a hold of the helmet, of course, and regains control of his monkey army, attempting to take over the world once again. Natalie, the professor's assistant, is naturally infuriated with Jimmy's incompetence and sends him off to capture all the monkeys and set things right. Okay, let me just preface my ensuing commentary here with the fact that I love this game. I've played through it many times and it's great fun, and I'm sure I'll be revisiting it again in the near future, especially with the HD port it received to the PlayStation 4. Got it? Okay, now hear me out. Ape Escape 2 is a bad sequel. Wait. Remember what I said already? That's not necessarily a bad thing. Put the knife away. Now then, Ape Escape 2's gameplay remains completely unchanged from the original game. For those who don't know, Ape Escape 2 focuses on the simple act of catching monkeys with various gadgets. All the gadgets are controlled with some kind of flick or spin of the right analog stick, while you use the symbol buttons to switch between the different devices. You also jump with the R1 button, which is a bit awkward, but it's a pretty easy adjustment after a while of playing. The big hook that keeps the game from feeling repetitive is that every monkey you capture has its own way of avoiding you and, in a lot of cases, fighting back. There's your basic yellow pants variety that runs away and tries to hit you to avoid getting captured with the monkey net. Blue pants are more shy and scared, more apt to hide and run away than to confront. White pants throw bombs, green pants shoot homing rockets at you from their little backpacks, and red monkeys are the most aggressive and will fight back and knock you off your feet, or in some cases, right off a damn cliff. This happened to me more times than I'd like to admit. Almost every encounter with a monkey then, in combination with the level design, is a unique experience that keeps players on their toes. There's also more traditional platforming obstacles in the levels themselves, but they aren't the most exciting and innovative things in the world. Even though moving platforms aren't really revolutionary, the overall level design is pretty stellar. The original game had the hook of using a time machine to go back to different periods to stop the monkeys, and while Ape Escape 2 doesn't really have a premise like that, it's still a globe-trotting adventure with some unexplained time travel involved to bring us to a crazy variety of environments, from Egyptian pyramids, mysterious citadels, and even a base on the moon. It keeps the game visually fresh, even if some areas, like the snow level with slippery ice physics, seem to just be check marks on a generic platformer stage list. The imagination compensates for the typical. Now, a major part of the gameplay is the gadgets. A lot of them return from the original game, so let's do a quick overview of them in a
Patrol Lightning Round. Stun Club.
It stuns monkeys and defeats enemies, your primary offensive weapon. Also suspiciously looks like a lightsaber but works more like a baseball bat you can use to beat adorable little piggies to death with.
Monkey Net.
Catch those monkeys and send them back to where they came, satisfying in just the right way.
Monkey Radar.
Ever wanted to peep in and see what monkeys are doing when you aren't looking? Well, why the police are on their way to your location, you little stalker. Figure out where monkeys are in any given level along with helpful stats to aid in their capture.
Water Net.
Try not to drown as you dive into deep water and launch a net at monkeys, capturing them as they desperately swim away from you like they just saw a shark in the water.
Super Hoop.
Gotta go fast. Gotta go faster, 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 faster.
Slingback shooter.
Want a slingshot with multiple pellet options? Great! Want to scream at your screen while trying to do precise aiming but the game refuses? Boy, do I have the gadget for you.
RC car.
It's a remote-controlled car you can drive around and turn into a pudding. I don't know what else you want me to say, guys. I mean, it's just a tiny car that speeds around and implodes. What do you expect? Something fancy like a Lexus or something?
Sky flyer.
Fly high into the sky and never return. So long, human race.
Banana ring.
Weaponize monkey's cliched true love for bananas and use it to capture them with its scent. Also hard to aim.
Water cannon.
It's just a garden hose. That's it.
Electromagnet.
Drag and attach yourself to various objects, be it yanking off enemies' protective headwear to panicking as you slowly float across bottomless pits, questioning your mortality as you dangle with just your thumb pressing hard on that right analog stick. And that concludes this.
Go Retro Lightning Round.
It wasn't that fast, so this name wasn't appropriate, but y'all are cool, right? We're good? Okay. Now, in general, the gadgets are great. It's just the new ones added to the sequel, like the banana ring and water cannon, that feel a bit tacked on. Whereas there are multiple situations where you might want or need to use a sky flyer and super hoop to reach higher areas or catch faster monkeys, these items are purely used in specific situations and only later in the game when they're introduced. Even then, it isn't that often. It becomes a bit of a chore to go into the gadget menu and switch in the item, take 5 seconds to use it, and then switch it back to a more useful one. It just feels superfluous and makes it kind of obvious, I think, that these gadgets were included mainly just to say that the game has new ones to use. For a sequel, they aren't interesting enough to really feel like worthwhile new features that evolve the gameplay of the first Ape Escape. One expansion I do appreciate, however, are the boss fights. While the original game had some bigger enemies to fight, there weren't any actual boss encounters beyond the Spectre fight at the end of the game and maybe the obstacle courses against your friend Jake that you didn't even actually have to win to progress. In Ape Escape 2, we get the Freaky Monkey 5 who pop up in every few levels. These are their own arena battles and they all are different from each other in some way to make them an interesting and fun experience different from the other levels of the game. First, there's Blue Monkey, a speedster who zooms around the stage at super fast speeds and throws small bombs at you. You're meant to chase him on the super hoop, but honestly staying in one place and timing your attacks works a lot better in my opinion. Then we have Yellow Monkey. He's interesting. Listen, I'm not entirely sure what Yellow Monkey's deal is, and I feel like he's offensive in some way. I just can't put my finger on it. His fight is in an arena with spikes surrounding it, as you have to knock him out of the area to defeat him. Unfortunately, he gets away before you can capture him. The third member of the Freaky Monkey 5 is Pink Monkey, who is the best boss in the game, purely by how creative and ridiculous it is. Pink simply desires to be a pop sensation, and when Jimmy shows up, she just wants to perform and sing her new hit single. You traverse these flower platforms to get to the stage, and she still doesn't even attack you, simply blowing kisses that can stun you for a brief moment. We hit her a few times with the stun clip and she crumbles to the floor. It makes you feel genuinely bad about what you're doing as she isn't fighting back at all. However, once you've ruined her concert, she flies into an honestly completely reasonable rage and starts fighting back, entering a sort of berserk mode. Once defeated, she falls to the ground crying. Ugh, yikes. Not looking like such a great guy right now, Jimmy. We then fight White Monkey, a scientist who primarily uses a bizarre Jimmy robot to fight for him using larger versions of your existing gadgets. It's a pretty straightforward fight, and the decision to make a robot look exactly like Jimmy is weird to say the least. Excessive, maybe? Just hit the obvious big button to enter the robot and you're good. White's voice actor is also amazing. Hearing him panic when he becomes vulnerable to attack doesn't get old.
Oh no! Hit me!
Red Monkey is the next boss and he does this with dinosaurs. And then farts in your face. Oh, he's sweet. There's also one boss I don't want to spoil. Yes, I know this game came out well over 15 years ago, but surprises are fun. Sheesh. Come on, people. And the final fight with Spectre. There's also a true final boss fight you can unlock once you capture all 300 monkeys in the game. It sounds like a crazy number, but it really isn't that difficult or time-consuming, especially once you get a final gadget that really packs a punch, if you know what I mean. As mentioned, it's the style and humor of the game that really helps make it all work. From the goofy names revealed when you capture the monkeys to the frankly bizarre enemies from Flamethrow, Pig Tank of Doom, to Tomato Bird. This is no-holds-barred goofiness that makes every encounter fresh and different, like in the snow level, for instance. There's Santa Monkey! Now, another new addition to the series is the Gacha Box. Located in the Lab Hub, you spend 10 of your hard-earned coins to get random items from cookies for your health to lives. The main thing you'll be collecting will be items for the lab. You can unlock enemy photos, new RC cars, funny photos, cutscenes, and music tracks from the game. There's also the Monkey Fables, and they are not fun. They're for the most part just old fairy tales with monkeys thrown in and constantly pop up in the Gacha Box since they're divided into parts. Though one does contain minor swearing in which young me thought was such a scandal. Nowadays, I've realized the Gacha Box is actually an early version of the loot box system that has been, shall we say, controversial in recent years. But it's all in-game currency, so it's not a big deal. You can also unlock little comic strips that are interesting, to say the least. Miss Banana is saved. Eek. Bubble, bubble. Hey you. How dare you boil Miss Banana? I just farted. Thump. The big collectible you unlock, however, are the minigames. Minigames are a staple of the Ape Escape series, and you get 3 in this iteration. There's Dance Monkey Dance, a rhythm game where you use the 2 analog sticks to move to the beat of the song and get wildly different scores from a panel of monkey judges that actually make no sense, seeing as I got a perfect 10 by one and a 3 out of 10 from another. Sure, there's Monkey Soccer, that is a straightforward soccer minigame that is honestly just meh, but I can see the appeal. Finally, there's the wickedly hard Monkey Climber, a game that requires fancy button work with the shoulder buttons and more to get a monkey across some ropes to the goal. They're honestly all pretty fun, but ultimately a bit forgettable. Some are 2-player compatible though, if that's your thing. By the way, while this game's available in an HD port for the PS4, it should be clear you've been seeing footage from the original PlayStation 2 version of the game. That's because the HD port, while it does look dramatically better, uses the UK version of the game with a European voice cast. The American version, published strangely enough by Ubisoft, even though it's a Sony-developed series, was seemingly dubbed by 4Kids, the people behind the English translation of Pokemon. Because of this, Jimmy is voiced by Veronica Taylor, the original voice of Ash Ketchum, and Natalie is voiced by Rachel Lillis, the voice of Misty.
Hang on a minute. You don't have enough gold coins.
I know, God. It's really delightful and hits me right in the gut with that nostalgia. The European cast is great too, don't get me wrong, but this is the version I grew up with and I'm sticking with it. I will give them this, their Spectre is better than ours. Apologies to James.
Cool.
But back to the bad sequel debate. Yes, I still stand by my opinion that Ape Escape 2 is a bad sequel. There are new additions and the graphical upgrade between the PlayStation original and the new one on the PS4 is significant, but gameplay-wise, not a lot has changed beyond the boss fights and the few new gadgets. It's the same gameplay of running around, catching monkeys, doing some platforming, using gadgets, catching monkeys, and yes, catching monkeys. So not enough new or evolved design choices to differentiate itself from the original, so it ends up just feeling like a more refined version of it. But, that's not a bad thing in this case. Ape Escape was so popular because it's so fun. Capturing monkeys is insanely satisfying, especially when it's emphasized by the dramatic spin-around effect that happens when you do so. So yes, Ape Escape 2 really doesn't reinvent the wheel, but it really doesn't have to. The foundation created in the first game is exceptionally strong, so there really wasn't a need to be that radical with updates. Also, if you miss Spike, it's entirely possible to unlock him and replay the whole game as him once you complete the game one time. It's a sort of new game plus mode that is absolutely an unexpected but great addition. Also, you get to watch Pink Monkey's full music video where she doesn't move her mouth at all. It's adorable and kind of creepy at the same time, especially with this frame surrounding it. Not sleeping tonight now, sorry. See, we're all good here. I adore the Ape Escape series in general, and Ape Escape 2 was a great addition. From its irreverent humor to its silly design and fun gameplay, it's honestly a PlayStation classic that really deserves to be checked out by gamers young and old. You don't want to disappoint Pink Monkey, do you?